We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
E-A-G-L-E-S,
Swing of the miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup. For the lead. Yes! Iverson, wow, what a fake on Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Well, good morning. It's the I believe, Mark, we're calling this the morning skate. This is the morning skate on Saturday morning. The Drunk on Ice pod. We're in here, talking all things Flyers. I gotta imagine, Mark, we gotta start the conversation with what is lighting the hockey world on fire right now. The Stanley Cup. Just when you thought that the Edmonton Oilers were down and out, Bob locking up the Stanley Cup Finals MVP, Florida taking home a Stanley Cup up 3-0. You got the Edmonton Oilers looking like the Undertaker in the WWE, just back to life, just rising up from the dead. Florida let them breathe. In that game 4, they let them breathe, and they let them rack up a pile of goals and start to feel good about themselves. And you let a bunch of guys score, and now you're sitting here 3-3 with all the momentum on Edmonton's side, even though they are going back to Florida for Game 7. No better words in the sports vernacular than Game 7. Monday night, with all the pomp and circumstance, Stanley Cup in the building. Someone's going home with a trophy, but geez, This series was electric because if I remember correctly, I'm going to try to go back and find it. I sent you a tweet on Slack. I sent you the on Friday, June 14th. The Oilers' top 5 scorers in the regular season have failed to score a single goal in the Stanley Cup Finals as of that day.
Mm-hmm.
So Draisaitl, Hyman, Bouchard, Nugent Hopkins, and Connor McDavid, 0 goals between all of them. And now you're looking at trying to save your season, save your what everything we knew was kind of locked up and loaded. And now you're going to have a dogfight, and you're going to need to show up like you did in games 1 through 3.
Yeah. This series has been incredible, the way it's kind of played out. And this is the first time, I believe, I was looking at it this morning, actually. And this is the first time since 1946. So we're talking pre-expansion era that a team has come back.
Correct?
What was that?
Is it the Maple Leafs?
Might have been the Leafs. I don't remember. I don't remember the team, but it could be the Leafs. But it's been 78 years since
jeez.
A team has come back from 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Finals to force a Game 7. And, this is very similar to what Edmonton did to Dallas in the Western Conference Final, where Dallas was kind of looked like they had them on the ropes, and, the Oilers could barely keep their hands up, and then all of a sudden, the series kind of takes a turn. I do wonder if, there's just been too many guys on Florida's side that haven't, like, they've just kind of vanished in this
Mm.
series. And I wonder, even though he scored last night, like, Barkov took that shot, that high shot, I think in, what was it, game 4?
I think so.
From Draisaitl. He hit him up high near the face, and I don't know if Barkov's 100%. I don't know if that shook him up, like, or what happened. Draisaitl was trying to get a piece of him. You know what I mean? When he
Mhm.
did that, it was frustration and things like that. Excuse me. And I think, I think once that happened, there's always like a few things that happen in a series, like in the course of, like, anytime something like this happens, it's like there's usually some things that go on in the series that kind of like you can point to and be like, maybe that's what changed it. Maybe that's kind of what flipped the series on its head.
True.
Other than the fact that I think Draisaitl and McDavid are, Florida might have the deeper team. They might be like better in other key spots, but the Oilers have the 2 best hockey players in the world right now on their team. And McDavid,
And they're kind of feeling themselves too.
yeah, they are. And even the depth guys on this team, Matthias Janmark, who's always been a good, useful player, I think, everywhere he's been. Connor Brown on a shorthanded breakaway the other, not last night, but I think back in Florida he scored, and that kind of, things like that. Warren Fogel's had some, he's had some big moments in the series too. I think he scored 20 goals for them this year. They've had a lot of guys kind of step up in those roles, and then, like, Skinner's been making the saves. He's been good enough, and it's really just, it's amazing that we're here. And I think, like, Florida, they always show that shot, right?
Mhm.
They always show that shot. They pan the bench, and if you fancy yourself a body language expert, like I do, like I like to sometimes, you're
People
watching
watching.
them. Yeah, people watching, and you watch them on the bench, and everybody's got that 1,000-yard stare. Everybody's just kind of
Mhm.
looking out into the ether. Nobody really knows what's going on.
They're all kind of just waiting. They're waiting for it. It's that sports cliche of, like, everybody's looking around waiting for somebody else to do something,
Mhm.
and then everybody's sitting around and nobody's doing anything. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And when you go to look at, and this to me is something that I just noticed just now as I'm sitting here watching looking at the stats,
Mhm.
that they've outscored Florida in games 4, 5, and 6, 18-5.
Jeez.
Like, you talk about, when in games 1, 2, and 3, Edmonton puts up 4 goals in the first 3 games.
Yeah.
And then in the next 3, they're putting up 18. Like we said, like we were saying in the open, like, Bob had that. He has one more really good game, and he
Yeah.
probably has that MVP locked up.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened in that first period in game 4. Bob comes out, obviously, right? Because you kind of just it seemed to me like after the first period, you kind of just write that one off.
Yeah.
But, like, to now go in consecutive games, in games 5 and 6, and give up another 5 in each game. Now, listen, I know, like, 2 of those goals last night are fluky. They're empty net, end of the game kind of get. But, like, you put Florida in a desperate spot with about 6 minutes to go, where they feel like they have. I think they took the goalie out, like, right around that 5 minute mark.
Yeah.
And you got them grasping at straws to try to figure out what to do in terms of how do we get the ship right, because
Yeah.
you got one shot left at this.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know. Like, I'd have to go back. I mean, I look at game 6, or not Yeah, game 6. I look at game 6 as like a whole there. I mean, that offside call on Barkov's first call. I mean, it was as close, of a call. I thought it was going to stand. I was like, they showed that on TV, and I was like, oh, this is going to count. And then,
Mhm.
they come back with the no goal call. And if you're Florida, you probably feel as if like everything's going against you at that point. You're just like, oh, and yeah, I mean, like they've completely lost like a stranglehold on this series.
Mhm.
Even guys like Kachuk who have been revelations, for this franchise. The Kachuk trade with Calgary to bring him to Florida was such a monumental deal for them.
Right.
Sam Reinhart, another one, 57 goals this year. Like it just, as you said, guys are just they're looking for somebody else to do it right now. And I don't know, like it would be impressive. It's going to be impressive either way, right? In game 7, it's going to be impressive if Edmonton comes all the way back and wins this thing, right? Like that, that's incredible. And, you talk about the high wire act that you have to do in the Stanley Cup final to win 4 in a row like that.
Right. I mean, listen, to win 4 in a row at any point during a playoff stretch.
Yeah.
Let
And
alone to do it.
Yeah, to do it against a team like Florida, I mean, like who's up until this point looked like a well-oiled machine.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're Florida, I think it's impressive if you're able to stop the bleeding in game 7. You win if they win the cup, then also to just like for everybody, Paul Maurice, the head coach, like to get this thing back on the rails after complete. That would be impressive in of itself, I think. If Florida was able to finally get that that last win they needed.
Yeah, listen, if Edmonton can pull this off, they'll be returning the Stanley Cup to Canada for the first time since 1993.
Yep. Montreal was the last
With Montreal.
Team. Yep.
So, and it'll be the first time back in Edmonton since 1990. So, the idea of a warm weather city winning the Stanley Cup, and to be honest, Florida has had enough celebrations with the stuff in Tampa with the Bucks and the Lightning, and I would love for a play. I think it would be really good for the game for players of that stature with McDavid and Draisaitl to be able to put that on their resume. But listen, it's going to be great theater. It's going to be great to watch. It'll be a super fun experience. And listen, Mark, I'm looking at SeatGeek because I couldn't resist the to get in the building. You're talking 4 figures to get in the building. The highest price seat, which is about 10 row, it's section 117, row 1. $91.65 gets you in the building. Jesus. For row 1. You can get you're looking the highest price seats are in the $8,000 to $9,000 range. But when you talk about the I don't see a price in here listed under $1,000. Now listen, that's on SeatGeek. That's not the face value, but like,
yeah. They priced me out. Jeez.
Yeah. So enjoy.
Yeah. I'll watch from my couch.
Yes, my couch will be just as comfy. The bathroom line will be not nearly as long.
Twice as short.
Exactly. So, listen, it should be fun. But some Flyers news, right? So there's some rumblings. We can start there with. It seems like Danny Briere is getting busy. Seems like he's kind of working the phones. Talk to me about where you are and the the potential moves that they're thinking about making with the draft coming up next week.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they want to move up in this draft from all that's been reported. The Flyers are looking to kind of move up into the top 10. And, you know, I wonder too, like, I mean, the disparity between like Ottawa, there's a lot of rumors between them and Ottawa, the Senators,
Yeah.
right? I believe it was reported by Travis Yost of TSN. He was the one that had that
Mhm.
that news first. And I wonder, is there that big of a disparity between pick 7 and pick 12? Like the Flyers must really have somebody on their radar that they really like if there's like a framework for a deal in place. I would
Mhm.
imagine like they want to move up, like they want to have multiple irons in the fire, so to speak, to kind of if they're if their player, if there are guys there that they really, really are in love with, that they'll make that deal with Ottawa to try to
Right.
get into the top 10. Yeah, I mean, like there's lots of stuff like that out there. I feel like that happens every summer, and
I
I'd
mean,
have to go back.
this is rumor mill. This is the rumor
Yeah,
season.
yeah. And it's fun to talk about. I mean, I love talking about the rumors and stuff like that, trades and potential trades and stuff. It's always fun, It's fun to kind of
Mm.
fantasy book it, and but yeah, I don't know if it's worth that for the Flyers at this point. I mean, I understand why they're doing doing that due diligence and trying to get in the top 10.
Right.
Because I think this is like in a lot of people's minds, in the draft, it's not an exact science, of course, but you know, every year there's always like players that are picked in later rounds that end up becoming great players and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But I think a lot of people in general think this is like a 13, 14 player draft, maybe 15 player draft. So after Celebrini goes first overall, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen as far 2
Listen,
through
the
15.
conversation on your latest episode of Water Cooler Talk was really insightful for me to kind of to think about the framework for how you approach the draft and how you look at that next group of guys.
Yeah.
That, like, do you look at it as a best position available guy? Do you look at it as a position specific? Like, do you reach? Do you not? That it seems like it's what I gathered from what your conversation was. It's going to be very team specific. There are going to be
Yeah.
some teams that just go best player available and put them in their, try to put them in their system and try to develop them and get them to the big club. Some teams are going to go very position specific. So,
Yeah.
let me throw one back at you.
Sure.
Is there an opportunity for this team and I'm just going to use Ottawa because Ottawa's been primary conversation.
Yeah.
Is there a way for them to get to that pick without giving up 12? Could they be looking at trying to pick at 7 and 12?
I would imagine so. I mean, I think that there's definitely a possibility of that. If you're looking at, I think if you're Ottawa, you would be looking at guys like Konechny, for that top 10 pick. I think that would be the kind of value you'd be after if you were moving a top 10 pick. So I definitely think there's a scenario. Joel Farabee's name has kind of been floated in rumors.
Sure.
Which, to be honest, I don't know if I really get. I mean, I like Joel. I think he had a good year this year. He struggled towards the end of the year, but a lot of guys did,
Okay.
So I didn't really, to put it on one guy seems kind of, not fair. But I think Joel's a good young player, and he seems like in the Flyers case, in a rebuild, you'd want to have a player like that, cost controlled. He's under contract, all those things. But I do think there's a possibility that you can make a move like that. But it would be certainly a roster player. Ottawa has apparently loved Scott Laughton for years, but I don't know if that's enough if you're the Flyers to get you into the top 10.
Yeah, I think you might. It could be like if there's a guy that they really like, it could be Lawton and maybe a future pick.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
if there's a pick like one, I could see a scenario where Briere seems pretty crafty in terms of his ability to be able to be creative.
Yeah.
It could be a pick 2 years down the line, and maybe that's a pick that they envision where they are at a different level and maybe a little bit more successful. So the pick has a little less value because it might be in the late 20s.
Yeah.
If you're looking at a team that could potentially be in the mix for a playoffs and making a deeper playoff run, then maybe that team, maybe that year, if they're projecting 2 years down the line and maybe they're projecting that pick to be, I don't know, 26 and above, 27 and above. That like maybe there's a little bit less value for them for that pick for that year. And maybe they're willing to do that to get a guy. And maybe it's a future pick plus Lawton. Maybe it's a guy in your system. Maybe it's I feel like there's a crafty combination, but to me, if you're trying to pick at 7 and 12, there's got to be 2 guys there that you really think are going to be impactful when this thing kind of starts to turn around.
Yeah, and another rumor that's been out there, and I think it's one of those things that like where you were just describing like other avenues where you could kind of keep the 12th pick, was that Buffalo's picking 11. They're picking right before the Flyers, the Sabres. So Buffalo has been very open. Their general manager, Kevin Adams, has been very open that pick is on the table. They're looking to get help now. I think Buffalo looks at their young nucleus of players and they're looking at it like, we want to get some veteran players in here, some guys that have good reputations and are known to be good leaders. And if the Flyers were, then there's that, well, maybe the Flyers keep pick 12. And then they make a deal with Buffalo to get pick 11, and then you have 11 and 12. And then is that more enticing to a team to like Ottawa? Maybe you do like you trade twice,
listen, that would be very akin to the Devontae Smith draft for the Eagles, right? Yes. You trade back and then you trade back up.
So that's out
like
there. I've seen people discuss that too. And I guess that like, I can't rule any of it out. I mean, any of it could really happen. Right. And we're going to hear a lot of things, over the next week, leading up to that draft. But we do see like it's an apt point, which you mentioned, about, future picks, because in the NHL now you see in recent years, you see teams more often than not. A lot of teams are willing to put like protections on picks now, where it's like, hey, we're, if we make it to the second round of the playoffs, this pick then becomes a 24 pick becomes a 25 pick or, something like that.
Right.
That's happening more now in the NHL than it used to. So I think that's also like, those things are also possibilities. But it's going to be fun. And these are my favorite kinds of drafts where like, they have the census one in Celebrini. Everybody thinks he's special. Everybody thinks he's going to be a great player, which he probably will be. And the Sharks have a great place to start there with Celebrini and Willie Eklund. And I know that they were expecting to be better than they were this year, but this is a really nice, like, there's a nice consolation prize,
Most definitely. Yeah,
so
the other thing I heard at the end of May was the Hurricanes making calls on what's the guy's name? Martin
Necas.
Marty
Necas.
And that the Flyers are listening. They're in on that conversation, right?
Yes.
And it's a guy who's 25, who's when I heard the conversation, it reminded me of Owen Tippett, right? A guy that like is young, could be under team control, the future could be brighter in the years ahead.
Yeah, Marty Necas is a really good player. if the Canes are, Carolina has so many things to figure out right now. They have like a ton of free agents, a lot of like marquee, valuable names. They've been a contender in recent years, but haven't been able to get over the hump. And yeah, so like Natchez, being like, I think he had 60 points this year. Like I'm pretty sure he had a pretty good year.
Right.
And he kind of fits the bill for the Flyers. Flyers are obviously need to find centermen. They're a little weak down the middle, and they're a little weak on the left side. I think the right side's kind of figured out, both now and in the future, right? Like,
Yeah.
you think about all the right wingers that are under contract. Natchez would be a huge addition for the Flyers if they were able to swing a deal where they could acquire him. And he kind of fits the bill. I think he plays that heavy. That he's got a heavy skilled game, and we know that the Flyers really value that. At least especially guys like John Tortorella is really known for liking players like that. So Natchez being available. I mean, like that kind of fits the bill for the Flyers if there's an opportunity to acquire a player like that. I think he would have to come with the contract. You'd have to kind of work something out with him beforehand.
Right.
But he's also restricted. He's a restricted free agent. And there's always like the looming possibility that someone offer sheets someone, which doesn't happen too often, but it's always fun when it does. And so I think it was actually Pierre LeBrun had mentioned that recently about, teams and team circles, people wondering if, could you offer sheet Marty Natchez and get him? Like, I mean, it's
yeah, I hear you.
So that could be a possibility too.
I hear you on that one. Listen, I got two more things before we jump out of here. The Utah Hockey Club.
Oh God.
Listen, out of all of the names, you had the Blizzard, the Mammoth, the Outlaws, the Venom, the Yeti, the Hockey Club.
The Hockey Club.
Now listen, I'm not going to try to upset any EPL, any hockey, any soccer clubs in Europe.
Yes,
I get that. That is inherently traditional to that sport in that area of the world. I don't get it. It seems very boring. It seems very lazy. What is the mascot for the hockey club? Like not that I'm a huge mascot guy, but like I feel like I don't know. It just made me go, really?
Yeah.
You had an opportunity to like rebrand everything.
Yeah.
And you went hockey club.
Yeah, I wonder like if that's like if we kind of have like a Washington football team kind of thing where like they're gonna wait a year or two before they like go with a name or something. I don't really know. Like, I don't know. I mean, if they were to stick with that, that would kind of suck.
You only get one chance to make the first impression, Mark. And the first impression for me is hockey club.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it just doesn't kind of there's opportunities too, like to kind of play around with things like that. Like, you know what I mean? And after a while, especially in NHL, like hockey kind of like we always end up shortening the name anyway, right? Like we all like
100%.
We call the Penguins the Pens, we call the Caps the you know what I mean? We call the Caps the Caps, it's like eventually like they all kind of get shortened up if they're not already short. But to just call them like the hockey club, I think is weird. I don't even really like the rumored jerseys that were kind of out there, like they're,
Utah.
Yeah, and
it's very Utah.
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it just didn't hit. It's weird. I hate to say it. It's just weird.
I said to somebody online on Twitter, I was chatting with someone and I said like they should go with the old Utah Jazz colors. Like I think that'd be cool for
Yeah,
like a hockey jersey. Like I'm talking like,
Mark, I would have been cool,
that would have been awesome.
right?
Like the,
Like
the
that, like
purple eggplant color, like that would have been really cool.
oh god. And this is the thing that blows me away is like you have like committees on committees on committees of people that this had to pass through,
Hmm.
and this is the one that everybody was like, I'm in on that. Like,
Yeah.
oh god.
Yeah, a lot of the rumored names, the names you read off were like I kind of like was with all of them. I kind of thought they were all kind of cool, especially because like some of them, like the Venom, for example, or like the Blizzard, like some of them seem like very like your club hockey team name,
Yeah.
which was kind of cool. I kind of dig that. I think that's kind of unique to hockey in particular. And but yeah, like right away, I think they should have right out of the chute. I think you should have a name, like
Yeah.
But
Listen. Well, listen, Mark, on to bigger and better things. Rich and I last night debuted our bracket summer project. So last summer we did the best time to have a beer bracket.
mhm.
And the vacation beer won it going away. So
Okay.
this year we are doing a Philly sports team booze bracket.
Mm.
So here, Mark, are so I went through and tried to find 8 Flyers, Phillies, Sixers, Eagles themed beers. So
All right.
we're gonna have we've got 8 of each. We're gonna do Twitter. We'll do some social media polls to kind of whittle it down over the summer. But this will be part of our podcast summer project. So you've got a couple of Conshohocken breweries.
Yeah.
You've got some breweries that I wasn't familiar with. So you got but a lot of gritty themed beers. So you've got the Gritty Gruel, the Nightmare Fuel. The one that is bonkers to me is called Eat Your Landlord. I don't get it. I don't know what it is, but the can has a picture of Gritty on the front.
Okay.
My most favorite one out of all of these is the Crosby Tears. So some of these are they were like single batch brews, so they're not
Sure.
necessarily in circulation. But have you had it? Have you had the? I know the one that's out there right now. The Jonesy Hockey Lager is a Conchi Brewery one that's kind of in circulation right now.
Yep.
The Big Hazy is another one that was popular.
Mhm.
So what I'm going to do is on the back end of this clip, on the back end of this show, I'm going to try to clip the segment of the show where Rich and I talked about all of them.
Yeah.
We're going to ask people to look at, be on the lookout for this stuff on social media. We're going to put the polls out there. We'll try to whittle it down to get every bracket down to one beverage, and then we'll have them face off over the summer and figure out what's going on. But it's should
Perfect.
be fun. Should be exciting to kind of see where they go from here. So
Yeah. The when I knew you guys were talking about doing this, I was right away. I was like, I hope I get asked about this because I hope this gets brought up.
So we'll period. So every time we'll kind of check in on the bracket, we'll kind of see what ones are moving on. I got to figure out, is it just a random matchup? There's some that I'm like, are they going to be like, I don't know how to rank them.
Yeah.
Like it might just be random, just a random matchup. The only one I'm going to try to avoid is like matching up like 2 of the same brewery.
Right.
We'll try to whittle those down so that it's.
We need to get we should have some of the reps on from the breweries, and we should do like a live taste test. That's what we should do.
Maybe as we get closer, we'll try to get in touch with some people and try to figure out if they can come on and kind of give us a little rundown. So
For sure.
Mark, anything else Flyers on the way out? I'm gonna just switch. I'm gonna plug the commercials in later on, so we'll just kind of get this all done and taken care of. Anything else Flyers you want to?
Nothing in particular. I think like Briere speaking yesterday.
That's right.
He did speak yesterday, and we touched on a lot of the things he was asked about the draft and things like that. Draft, of course, starts Friday night. There may be, like, depending on if something happens or not, there may or not be an emergency water cooler talk pod later after the first round, depending on what happens there. But yeah, I think like they're all important at this point, especially for a team in the middle of a draft that's rebuilding, and has been very open about prioritizing the future right now, and that is what it is, and they've been transparent through those things to this point. So these are critical. This is a critical time for the organization. You get this right, and then we can start talking about some of those things we talked about at the top of the show, but just for the orange and black. So
most definitely. Well, listen, be on the lookout for the next one, but we'll catch you on the back end of this these intro outros, and we'll be talking Sixers on the other side.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Well, welcome back. And this is episode 213 of Drunk on the Court, but we're talking all things Sixers. It's been quite an interesting off season, Mark. To put it perfunctory. Go figure at an opportunity where you had the opportunity to have an enormous amount of salary cap flexibility, that you're doing it at essentially the most mundane group of free agents available. I got to be honest, the Sixers have me like, like it's just, I don't know, the stuff that's coming out with Paul George, and they're not interested in Paul George, but then there's the Zach LaVine news, and then there's like it's just, it has me feeling just very uneventful. You've got the Jimmy Butler news, you've got LeBron James news, you've got like Brandon Ingram. You've got me looking at a bunch of dudes, and I don't know which way to be excited. So I'm just kind of like putting my hands up going, I don't know where to go. It's kind of a wild position, because we thought a couple of years ago when we kind of looked to this summer that there was going to be a lot of big names and a lot of guys that they could add, but a lot of those names have come off the table. The Pascal Siakam news comes out that he's going back to Indiana, which I get. Talk to me off a ledge here, because I'm like,
It kind of feels to me where, like, one of the things that I think is really interesting about it, it almost feels like there has to be, like, in order for there to be a, interest in a player and things like that, there has to be like a market to exist. You know what I mean? Like, and it kind of feels like we have like a market, but we don't have enough players to fill the market, kind of thing. And And it's almost like
Mhm.
it's too much cap space. Like the $60 million in cap space the Sixers have, it feels as if it's too much cap space in a year like this, where it's like, well, what do you do with it? Especially if, I had said on previous shows about the Paul George thing and wondering if that was just simply looking to kind of like using the Sixers as leverage, using those rumors as leverage. That
Mhm.
still may be the case. That might be the case now with maybe he
True.
was never really all that interested in leaving the Clippers. He was just looking for the money. I know that he's from LA. I would imagine that he wanted to stay there.
Mhm.
To come all the way east to, join a Sixers team I think the perception is that they're not any closer than the Clippers are now. At least that's the perception to people.
True.
And it might be one of those things, though, where it's just that might be a good thing for the Sixers. I know we're not talking about that right now because the George rumor kind of gets shot down. They're not apparently
Which I
interested.
got to be honest, I heard that and I was like, there was actually a little sigh of relief. I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm okay with that.
Because when you're
But then I
going
don't.
big, yeah, you're going bigger contracts for guys that are on the other side of 35. You're going to be dealing with things like they're not going to play every day. You know what I
Right.
mean? They're not going to play every night. We can't even get our star on the floor every night to begin with. So it's like, it just then becomes like, there would be a lot of matchups, I think, where it would just be like Maxey and a bunch of dudes, like, in that situation on a
True.
lot of nights.
Yeah.
And, does that really make you better? And then like you have the contract aspect of it. Like I'm never going to sit here and say that players like Paul George and Jimmy Butler and these guys that make these like they get this big money. Like I'll never ever tell anybody that they're not worth it or they didn't earn it. It's just that I don't know if I want my team to be the one giving them the money.
True
and
story.
and that's really kind of where it comes from. I think especially the fandom aspect of it. But I mean, it sounds like Miami's going to trade Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, his days seem to be numbered. And I wonder now what kind of leverage does that give them in terms
Right.
of the package that they get back? And like you really don't have a ton of capital to swap with Miami other than picks because you don't have a lot of guys under contract. So
Right.
that's going to make the package to get Jimmy Butler. I know that there's a lot of desire for them to kind of redo that whole situation. And they really look back at the contract that they basically chose Brett Brown over Jimmy Butler,
Yes.
which in turn allows you to tie your wagons to Tobias Harris, which, a guy who was wildly unproductive in big moments. I don't know. I'm curious, right? Because the guy, the latest, is that Brandon Ingram is a guy that New Orleans is willing to have a conversation with you about. I would honestly have more interest in a guy like that,
Mhm.
who I would rather give the money to on the younger end. But then I go and look at teams that win. And if you want to be a team that wins, you win with guys with experience. You don't win with young guys. It's very, very, very rare. On the rarest occasions do you have a team that is able to make a really deep playoff run
Mhm.
with a lot of guys that are not experienced,
Right.
which is the one intriguing thing that I find about LeBron James, even though it's a very big pipe dream.
Mhm.
And the likelihood is that he probably goes back to LA and that the Lakers end up taking his son and he plays with his son. But you need a guy, in my mind, you need a guy like that. You need a guy
Mhm.
that's going to provide the veteran play experience of a guy that's been in those deep playoff runs, that's been in those situations, that has the experience to be able to guide a young group of Brandon Ingram, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean I agree with that. I think the LeBron thing, it's a shame too, I think for Bronny. to have his, I'm sure he's trying to make his own way here, and it feels like he's he's being used as a bargaining chip to get LeBron, to get the father,
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
and because people's evaluations of Bronny are all over the board,
I mean,
and
listen, you've heard everything from I wouldn't take the name away from the guy, and he wouldn't even be a guy that you would draft.
yeah,
To the and then the next story is what are his odds to be picked number 1 overall?
yeah, right, and it's hard to evaluate because it's like how do you differentiate between the two,
Mhm.
between we really want LeBron, but we're going to have to take Bronny with a pick that could be of value. This draft also is not seen as like a particularly good draft at all.
Nah.
So that's even more alarming when you hear people say, I don't even know if I'd use a pick on Bronny. And it's not even seen as a big quality
And it's a
draft.
really big, right, and it's not a great draft. Yeah.
So that's a big element of it too. I've said again on this show, and maybe we'll dive deeper into it coming up here, but I know that he may not be like the sexiest name, but I'm in on the Brandon Ingram thing. I'm getting with that. I'm excited about that if that trade comes to fruition and the Sixers can make that happen.
I mean, listen, you add listen, we can dive in that you add a wing with length. You add a guy that can create space, a guy who is more than a reputable 3-point threat. I'm in on it. I'm in on making that deal because I feel like that makes you younger, more athletic. And I also think, because he would have to come in a trade, it still gives you the flexibility to be able to sign a guy, like OG Anunoby. To me, if you can add those two guys, I like that plan better than adding an older late 30s NBA vet.
Yeah, and like we mentioned with Paul George, a lot of my same concerns I raised about Paul George are the same I would have about trading for Jimmy Butler.
Mhm.
Jimmy's not playing a lot as it is now, and he's older. And as you mentioned, I don't want them to be in a position as a fan where you're kind of trying to rectify something that you bungled a few years ago. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
kind of seems. I don't think that's good business. I don't think you should do something like that. You make the trades
Oh.
that you make the moves that you make, and they work out. They don't. But it's hard to go back and try to like acquire. I think people have always had that soft spot in Philadelphia for Jimmy just because he seems like a good fit personality wise. But we have to recognize that he's probably not the player he was even back then. So
And there's the conversation, right?
right.
Are you paying for the guy that you're getting moving forward? Or are you paying for the guy that what he used to be?
Mhm.
Your window with Joel Embiid is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Mhm.
When he's battling the health issues that he's battling every year in terms of staying healthy and being available deep into the playoffs, you need to surround him with guys that are younger, that are athletic, but you have to balance it with guys that have playoff experience.
Right.
Like there's a guy like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a guy that I would be in on.
Mhm.
I like the way that you would be able to, kind of acquire him through free agency.
Yeah.
But a guy who's been in Denver for a couple of years, who's been on some championship teams, who's got that playoff experience, can be, an adult leader in the room.
Mhm.
I like where like that's a guy I would be in on. Now the other guy that I thought about is and this would be another trade, like Lauri Markkanen.
Mhm. Yeah.
is another guy that I would be willing to move some capital to be able to,
Right. Yeah. Laurie would be up there
Mhm.
for me as well. I mean, I think I was really encouraged last year with all the things that the roster kind of dealt with and the turnover and, not having Embiid and things like that, and us seeing what life would be like with just like Maxey and a bunch of guys. I think like at this point for the Sixers, it's like acquire the talent first and figure out the fit and things like that later. You mentioned the things you mentioned about Brendan Ingram. They're all reasons why I'd want him. Solid ball handler. And maybe the fit in New Orleans hasn't been the perfect fit. But if you go back a few years, I mean, he made an all-star team. He was the most improved player in 2020. So there's some things there. Like there's some things to work with there. And I think he is a cut above, in terms of, you mentioned Harris. I think this guy, from a talent perspective, is a cut or two above him in terms of just talent. I think it's an upgrade there.
Listen, as long as you're not getting a 0 out of that spot, like
Yeah.
you're getting improvement. You need that guy that you add next to Maxey and Embiid to be a guy that can fill it up and score. And Tobias Harris, listen, for all intents and purposes, there were plenty of people on podcasts and radio and whatever, calling him the friendly ghost because he had the frequency to be able to, disappear in huge moments when you needed him. Times when, Maxey and Embiid were off the floor and he was giving you a single digit performance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can't be the third guy. And when one of the first two guys is out and, and have a stat line that's like 6 points and 3 rebounds.
Yeah. Yeah. They just simply, that was such a microcosm of that entire contract.
Oh, 100%.
Really, his last year here was just like not getting enough bang for our buck. And besides that, one of the things I was going to mention about Ingram was that, despite all those qualities that we all like, I do know that he has a reputation for not being particularly, not exerting a lot of effort defensively. And that is one thing that I'm sure would drive people crazy here. But also, I think that's really where it comes in, and I would be encouraged based on what we saw last year. That's really a Nick Nurse type of thing. If Nick Nurse can get a little bit more buy-in there, then, maybe the player's game kind of it rounds itself in the form. He becomes the player that the Sixers need him to be. But I would look at it for him. I mean, this would be a big opportunity to come here and to be a third guy to two really good players.
Oh yeah.
And
listen, you pair him with, if, in the scenario that I'm presenting, you pair him in an offseason where you can also add OG Anunoby, can also be that young athletic wing that can fill that defensive role that you need for those deep playoff runs. And I liked what I saw in the series. Like you got an up close glimpse of him in this most recent playoff series with the Knicks. I liked what I saw, and I liked the fact that you could have him young and under team control for a little bit, which you're going to need to figure out options on that end. Zach LaVine is another guy whose name has come up in the last couple weeks. I know that there's a lot centered around the fact that the Sixers are not interested. I don't know how to feel about Zach LaVine. I don't know. Zach LaVine to me seems like a guy who's like has to me a tendency to like show up and then be like invisible.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that with LaVine. I love the talent. Like I really do.
Mhm.
And when he's got it going on, I mean, he's a high quality offensive player, right? He can fill it up when he's good when he's on his game.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, you know, athleticism off the charts, always has been. I think, to this day, I think people look back at those dunk competitions, early in his career,
Right.
when he was in Minnesota, and uh, being a part of the dunk contest. I mean, that still sticks out in my mind. I still think of him,
Mhm.
even though he's much older now. He was a young player back then, but um, yeah, I mean, he's still very. I, like looking at what Chicago's doing. I mean, right now, it kind of they make the Alex Caruso trade the other day with Oklahoma City. They get Josh Giddey
Mhm.
in return, and I kind of like that deal from both aspects. Like, if
It
someone
seems
can,
like it's going to give both of those guys an opportunity to be in better positions for themselves.
yeah, and that doesn't always happen, right? Like,
Not at all.
so it kind of like Caruso's going to be a nice fit there in Oklahoma City. We know that they're a really good young team and lots of talent. And then, Chicago, they're probably looking towards the future, but you could do worse than Josh Giddey, especially if you can get somebody to work with him. And, maybe he's able to kind of develop a little bit more than he has been in
Oh, most definitely.
OKC. So, but then like, there's also rumors of them trying to bring back DeMar DeRozan and all. I'm not really sure what they're doing. Like, and it's unfortunate, I think for basketball in particular, because they have they're in a great market, they're in a large market,
Mhm.
and they have the Jordan legacy and things like that, and it's just in recent years, it's just been a mess
Yeah.
there. So
It's been
but
gross.
yeah,
Like the way that you've handled it. I mean, it feels very, very. That they want to be better, but they're not willing to kind of push all in to be better.
yeah, it's kind of like a 1 foot in, 1 foot out type of thing, and that's unfortunate. But if they trade Levine, it's like, well, I don't know what a Levine trade looks like for them in terms of maybe some
Right.
combination. You're gonna have to make the money work. So maybe there's some expirings going back and picks and
Yeah.
things of that nature. But I Levine's name's out there too, but the Sixers don't seem to be particularly interested in that. From what's being rumored, as you said, and uh,
It just kind of
yeah,
seems to me like this is like is this keeping your cards close to the deck and kind
yes,
of that's to me kind of seems where this is kind of landing for me, which is like, okay, I'm okay with that. And I would love to be surprised and be blown away by a move that I didn't see coming.
hmm
Um, but we'll kind of see where that kind of lands. Yeah, they're also talking about it is the expectation that they bring back Batum and Oubre, which I
hmm
like.
hmm
The other guy is Kyle Lowry. I like the idea of bringing back that is another veteran leadership guy. And those are guys that can provide you the veteran experience, can be in your starting five when you need them to be, but can also be, if you upgrade the starting five with some youth, bringing the vet guys off the bench is another really, really good option to go.
hmm yeah. I don't have any problem with that either. Looking at that, um, with Lowry, Batum, and I know that Embiid apparently is very tight with Nico Batum, and
Mhm.
um, that
Well,
counts for something.
they've got that the France they've got the French thing in
Sure.
common.
Yep. And we've always been drunk on the court's always been pro Kelly Oubre, so
Big fan.
big fans here. And yeah, so I mean Kelly coming back and it being under a reasonable deal.
Right.
You backfill the roster with those guys who already kind of prove that they could, in a particular role, can help you, and you
Right.
address those other needs with the cap space, because I would imagine cap space wouldn't be an issue with Batum and Lowry and those guys, probably vet mins, I would imagine.
Right.
And yeah, and you kind of you fill out the rest of the roster there with more talent. It's just really a matter of identifying that talent because it's so scarce right now in terms of nobody
It
comes
really
without
is.
a little bit of baggage, which is kind
Yeah,
of
and that's hard because it's kind of like you it's like when your team wins the lottery for the number one pick and it's a really historically bad draft. Like that's kind of what it feels like. Like you have the opportunity to have this enormous amount of cap space and you don't have the opportunity to be able to kind of like you're like you would love to be able to just throw money wildly at the best guys available, and the best guys available are not great.
mm,
They're like they all come with baggage, so it's like it's weird. The other thing that's coming up is the draft, right? Before we jump out of here, they pick in the mid-teens. It would really surprise me if they pick a guy.
Yeah.
It would probably my ideal scenario is that there's some kind of draft night trade for in place where they're picking for somebody else and they're trading that pick for a guy who's going to bring you vet experience.
Yeah. I wonder about that as well, like with the pick, because there's only so many things that you can do if you're the Sixers, and you would have to imagine that pick would be involved in any move as so long as that it's a trade, that pick
Right.
would be surely on the move. One thing that I read, I wish I could ascribe, like give credit to where I saw it, but I can't remember right now. Is that the Sixers have also been like they've expressed some kind of interest in Duke's Jarrett McLean.
Oh, I got it.
Oh, you do?
I'm looking at the tweet right now.
Oh, there you go.
On Sixers, the Philly Sixers Galaxy is where
Okay.
I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
Jeremy Woo
Okay. Yeah.
is where I'm gonna try to pull I'm gonna share this tab. Here we go. Let's pull it up here. Here you go.
Yeah. There we go. Yep. I've seen that too, and I know that he's got some ability, as a scorer and things like that, and like I just don't see how adding a player, young like he is, unless you're 100% sure, that
Sure.
that he has a role and could step in relatively soon in terms of, but that doesn't really help you in terms of like, as you mentioned earlier, pursuing a title, especially with the Embiid stuff. And it feels like we're on a clock with that.
Right.
And, you have to kind of consider that, but, it would be surprising, I think, if they ended up keeping the pick and McLean was on the board and they were able to draft him. That would be interesting. And I would wonder how he would fit, moving forward.
It would be interesting. I'm curious to see how this kind of offseason plays out. I feel like I haven't felt this way since the last time that like the Sixers were that summer. The Sixers were kind of in on LeBron.
Yep.
And then they had the billboards and you had everything. Like I'm curious to see how that plays out. Because I'm like, I'm kind of in on it, but I'm almost approaching this off season like I was approaching last year's Flyer season, almost with like no expectation.
Yeah.
Like it just kind of is what it is. And I think the plan for me, and it seems like the plan for the Sixers, is that you continue to surround Joel Embiid with talent until the wheels fall off, and you ride that train until that you exhaust all possibilities. But this is like your last chance to really make a big change in your organization before you have to make other bigger decisions.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, there's probably not that many opportunities to take a swing at this. Like this offseason is super pivotal for everybody involved. I mean, I can't imagine if the Sixers were the completely just jack up this this offseason. I mean, I can't imagine Morey makes it through that. You know what I mean? Like, and you'd have to
And
start
then
looking.
and then you start all over.
Yeah, then
Like,
you're
then
starting
you
all
just-
over again. You know, and there. What other option is there at that point? You have to kind of, you know, you can't be in the mushy middle in the NBA. It's too.
No, you're either fighting at the top or you're
Yeah.
languishing at the bottom,
Yeah,
which is like,
and it's rough. It's rough, and you
Mhm.
have to have somebody that you can build around. And we would be in the same position we would be in with, you know, Joel. With just we would have Maxey at that point. You know, it'd be like, well, it's
absolutely.
Maxey, and then like we have to figure out how to augment this guy with talent, and how do we do that? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
yeah.
so
Yeah, the tweet that kind of hit home was the screenshots of the draft boards of Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz above the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum picks with
Mhm.
the Celtics, and like it hit. I think it hit us and the Lakers because we were both in the same boats.
Yeah.
Picking guys, and listen, those guys were consensus picks at that time. So like
Yeah.
you can't the revisionist history is what it is, but like kind of sucks.
It doesn't
Kinda
make it any
sucks.
less painful.
And to know that the Boston fans have had as many parades as I've seen is just, it sucks.
Yeah.
So to drown our sorrows in other news, our summer, you know, we were just on the hockey show talking about our summer project, our Sixers sports team theme booze bracket, our Sixers edition. So we've got some really cool cans. If you checked out some of the Trust the Process from the Evil Genius, which is a really cool design. You've got the Emperor's New Jump Shot, which is a Joel Embiid themed beer and it's a combo between Misconduct and Conchi.
Okay.
You've got the Answer, which is a callback to our childhood with Allen Iverson. You've got the Tailgate playlist. The one really cool can is the Conchi Brewing Zooisms with the Mark Zumoff, because it's got the artwork on there is all of his, you know, famous call tags, which is like a really
That's
cool
amazing.
thing. Now, number 8 is the Hinky Sweet Revenge, which is a really, really cool take on a beer. Now, the Sixers ones were hard to find, so I had to go in a different direction.
Okay.
I had to go and this will probably be the lowest seated thing on the list. The James Harden wine collection. And then the Chad's Ford Winery Banner Series, which is it should be, again, you're going to see these. We're going to pair them up. We'll put them on social media, but have you had any of these, Mark? Have you seen them? Are you familiar with any of these before we jump out of here?
I hate to say this, but I am not. I would try Zooisms, the Answer, because of the Iverson thing. Maybe even the wine. I mean, I like a good glass of wine from time to time. So maybe some wine too. I would
There we
try
go.
those. So
Very cool.
I'll have to try
Listen,
them and report back. That's
Well, yeah, listen, that and Mark, I love the idea that you were sharing earlier, where the closer we get, the maybe we try to get in touch with some of the breweries to kind of have them on, and
yeah.
Maybe we have a Final Four show with some of the people involved. But Mark, anything Sixers related on the way out the door?
Yeah, I mean, just I guess my overall sentiment here is just like, don't mess this up. Yeah, please. I'm begging.
Simple, right?
Yeah, please do not mess this up. You are not going to get another opportunity like this with this kind of cap space, whether the market is flooded with talent or not. They have to get this right this time. And just watching the finals and things like that, and it gave me hope that I look at a team like Dallas and I think about where they were. And when they acquired Kyrie, I don't remember anybody thinking that was a good idea based on what was happening in Boston before he got there. Like, with just how, I think he was able to do a completely 360 in terms of perception.
Yeah.
And which gives me hope with the Sixers that things could turn around quickly if you take a calculated risk with maybe an acquisition or something like that. Not just the talented player, but the right player. And then you look at how that ends up working out. Or maybe you're able to acquire this year's PJ Washington and able to kind of get somebody whose game, has another level to reach. And is able to do that, and is able to like actually put it together. I don't know if the PJ Washington's sustainable or not in Dallas, but we haven't had that, and the organization really needs that. So I'm pleased, I'm gonna be really, really upset with Morey on here later in the summer if this goes completely sideways. So,
well, listen, tune in. We'll have some more episodes over the summer, but Mark, on the way out, have a good summer. Enjoy, everybody. Go enjoy the weather. Stay cool, stay hydrated, and we'll check in with you on another weekend.
Peace.
Peace.